When my son Daniel called and said he and his wife Laura were having financial troubles, I didn't hesitate. Mom, we just need a place to stay for a little while. Just until we get back on our feet, he had said, his voice filled with the quiet shame of a grown man asking for help. Daniel was my only child. No matter how old he got, he would always be my little boy, and I would do anything for him. So, of course, I said yes. Come home, sweetheart. My house is your house. If only I had known what I was inviting in. They arrived 2 weeks later, bringing with them an army of moving boxes. I had expected a few suitcases, maybe a bit of extra furniture. Instead, they showed up as if they were relocating an entire household, and they didn't seem too concerned about where they put things. Before I could protest, my quiet, organized home became an obstacle course of clutter. Boxes in the hallway, baby toys strewn across my living room, kitchen counters drowning in their endless appliances. And then there was their son, my grandson, Ethan. A 4-year-old storm of energy who didn't listen to a single thing I said. Ethan, sweetie, don't run inside, I'd say. He'd sprint faster. Ethan, that's Grandma's antique vase, don't touch. Smash. Laura barely looked up from her phone. It's just a vase, Mom. He's a child. Let him be one. I clenched my teeth and cleaned up the mess. That became the pattern. Ethan ran wild. Daniel and Laura let him, and I cleaned up the wreckage. My bedroom? No, their bedroom. The first real shock came the following week. I had given them the guest bedroom. It was spacious, cozy, and had a queen-size bed. But one morning, as I stepped out of my room, I noticed something odd. The door to the master bedroom was slightly open. My bedroom. I peeked inside, and there they were, Daniel and Laura lying in my bed. My chest tightened. Mom, Laura said groggily, blinking up at me as if I were the intruder. We had to move. The guest bed is just so small. You understand, right? Understand? They had taken my room, my sanctuary, like it was theirs, like I didn't exist. I should have put my foot down right then and there, but I didn't. Instead, I nodded numbly and backed out of the room. I felt like a guest in my own home, and that was just the beginning. At first, I told myself it was temporary, that they were just getting comfortable, but soon my space wasn't mine anymore. Laura redecorated. Mom, your furniture is so outdated. Let's modernize it a little. My kitchen was rearranged. Mom, I need everything to be where it makes sense for me when I cook. My refrigerator was stocked with food I didn't buy, half of which was things I didn't even eat. I tried to push back. Sweetheart, I like my house the way it is. Mom, we're just helping. You should be thanking us. Every protest was met with eye rolls, sighs, or fake concern. And then, one day, I came home from running errands and found the final straw. The moment I walked in, I knew something was off. Voices, laughter, a smell I didn't recognize. I stepped into my own kitchen and found a strange woman stirring a pot on my stove. I blinked. Oh, hey, she said with a casual smile, as if this were normal. I turned to Laura, who was sipping coffee at the table. Who is this? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. Laura waved a hand. Oh, that's Julie. She's my friend from the gym. She needed a place to crash for a few nights, so I told her she could stay. Stay? A woman I had never met before was now living in my house, without so much as a question. The blood drained from my face. Laura, I said carefully, this is my home. You don't get to invite people to live here without asking me. She gave me a look, one of those condescending, oh, you poor thing looks. Mom, you're being dramatic. It's just a few nights. Relax. 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 I had spent my life building this home. I had raised my son here, made countless memories here, poured my heart and soul into every inch of it, and now I was being shoved aside. That was the moment I knew. This had to end. They thought they had taken over. They thought they could control my home, my life, me. But they were about to learn a lesson, because this house, was still mine, and I had one final move to make. The night after I discovered Laura's friend Julie casually making herself at home in my kitchen, I barely slept. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling like a stranger in my own house. The walls, once filled with warmth and memories, now felt suffocating. Every creak of the floorboards reminded me of them, the people who had taken over every inch of my space. I wasn't just living with Daniel and Laura. I was being phased out, and if I didn't do something soon, I would disappear entirely. I woke up the next morning with a plan. I was going to take back control, but I never got the chance. Because when I walked into the living room, I found something that made my stomach drop. My old bookshelf, gone. In its place, a sleek modern entertainment center, complete with a giant TV I had never bought. I turned slowly to find Laura and Daniel casually having breakfast, acting like nothing was amiss. "What happened to my bookshelf?" I asked, my voice sharp. Laura looked up, chewing on a piece of toast. "Oh, we put it in the garage. It was so bulky, and honestly, it didn't fit the vibe we're going for." "The vibe they're going for?" "Laura, this is my home. You can't just throw my things into the garage." She rolled her eyes. "Mom, don't be so sensitive. We're just making the space better. Better. Better for who?" Daniel, my own son, barely looked at me. He just muttered, "It's not a big deal, Mom. Not a big deal." It felt like a funeral, a slow erasure of my existence in my own home. Over the next week, my life became unrecognizable. My antique dining set, gone, replaced with some cold, minimalist table. Laura said was more functional. My cozy armchair by the window, shoved into storage to make room for a Peloton bike Laura used once before abandoning. Even my fridge was no longer my own. Every time I opened it, I found food I didn't buy. Quinoa, oat milk, plant-based everything. I couldn't even find my own butter among their organic nonsense. And Ethan, he ran wild, destroying everything in his path. One afternoon, I caught him coloring on my walls with markers. "Ethan, no, we don't draw on walls," I scolded, grabbing the marker from his tiny hand. Instead of apologizing, he screamed bloody murder. Laura came running in, took one look at his crocodile tears, and immediately turned on me. "Mom, he's just expressing himself. You don't have to be so harsh." Harsh? I wasn't even allowed to discipline a child running rampant through my house? I wanted to scream. Instead, I turned on my heel, marched into the guest room, the one I had been downgraded to, and slammed the door. I felt like a prisoner, and I was done playing along. One evening, after another long day of feeling invisible, I overheard something that made my blood freeze. I was heading to the kitchen for a glass of water when I heard Laura's voice, low and conspiratorial. "I mean, she's getting old. It's only a matter of time before she needs to move to a retirement home, right?" I stopped dead in my tracks. "Honestly," she continued, "this place is perfect for us. I think we should just start making it ours." Ours! I felt like I had been punched in the gut. They weren't just taking over my house temporarily. They were planning to push me out. Right then and there, something inside me snapped. I had spent my entire life building this home, and I wasn't about to let two entitled brats steal it from me. The next morning, I walked into the kitchen, poured myself a cup of coffee, and made an announcement. "I've decided to move out." Silence. Daniel looked up from his phone. "What?" "You heard me. I'm moving out. This house is all yours now." Laura's face lit up like she had just won the lottery. "Oh my God, Mom, that's amazing. When are you leaving?" Her eagerness made me sick. "Soon," I said. "Very soon." Daniel frowned. "But Mom, where will you go?" I sipped my coffee and smiled. "Oh, don't worry, sweetheart. I have a plan." And oh, did I have a plan. They thought they were winning. They thought they had everything figured out. But they had no idea I was about to teach them the lesson of a lifetime. From the moment I announced I was moving out, Laura couldn't hide her excitement. She pranced around the house like she had just won the lottery, humming to herself as she scrolled through furniture catalogs on her phone. Daniel, however, wasn't so sure. "Mom, are you really okay with this?" he asked that evening while Laura was putting Ethan to bed. I sipped my tea, masking my true emotions. "Of course, sweetheart. You and Laura clearly love this place. It makes sense for me to step aside." He frowned, but he didn't question it further. If only he knew. Packing up, or so they thought. The next morning, I played my role perfectly. I started packing my things, not in the careful, sentimental way one does when truly moving out, but in a hurried, careless way that made Laura's eyes gleam with anticipation. She hovered over me, pretending to be concerned. "Oh, Mom, are you sure you don't need help? I know this must be so emotional for you." Emotional? I had to clench my jaw to keep from laughing. If only she knew the real reason behind my departure. I simply smiled and kept packing. Laura, blissfully ignorant, took the bait, hook, line, and sinker. Later that afternoon, I heard them whispering in the kitchen. I knew Laura wouldn't be able to resist. A few minutes later, she casually strolled into the living room, her voice syrupy sweet. "Mom, Daniel and I were thinking." I braced myself. "Since you're moving out, why don't you just sign the house over to us?" There it was, the moment she had been waiting for. I widened my eyes, as if caught off guard. "Oh?" She nodded eagerly. "I mean, it makes sense, right? That way you don't have to worry about property taxes, maintenance, or, the stress of managing a home at your age." At your age. The audacity of this woman. I folded my hands in my lap and pretended to ponder her words. Then, after a long pause, I smiled warmly. "You know what, Laura? You're absolutely right." Her eyes lit up with greed. "Oh, that's wonderful. We can call a lawyer tomorrow." "Actually," I interrupted, "I already have everything in motion." The color drained from her face. "What?" I leaned forward, my smile never fading. "Oh, yes. I've been planning this move for a while now. In fact, the papers have already been signed." Laura blinked rapidly. I could see the panic creeping into her eyes. "What do you mean, signed? You already transferred the house to us?" I laughed lightly, shaking my head. "Oh, no, darling. I sold it." The moment the words left my mouth, Laura's entire face contorted. "You what?" She shrieked so loudly that even Ethan, in the next room, started crying. Daniel's face drained of color. "Mom, you sold the house? But where will we live?" I took another slow sip of my tea, letting the weight of my decision sink in. "Well, that's the interesting part." I set my cup down, looking between the two of them. "You see, the new owners take possession at the end of the month, which means you need to be out by then." Laura looked like she was going to be sick. You can't do this. This is our home." I arched an eyebrow. "Oh, I thought it was my home." Daniel ran a hand through his hair, realization finally dawning. "Mom, where are you going?" I smiled, standing up and stretching as if this whole situation was the most relaxing thing in the world. "Oh, don't worry, sweetheart. I'm moving into a beautiful new condo by the lake. It's smaller, but just perfect for me. And guess what? Guess what?" They stared at me in horror. "It's a 55-plus community. No kids allowed." Laura let out a strangled noise as she collapsed onto the couch, staring blankly at the wall. She had played her little game of takeover and lost. Daniel looked utterly betrayed, but at that point I didn't care. I had sacrificed enough. Now it was my time. And as I walked away, leaving them to process their disastrous miscalculation, I had to bite back a grin. Oh, how the tables had turned. The house was silent. For the first time in months, Laura had nothing to say. She sat there, her mouth slightly open, as if the words were stuck in her throat. Daniel, on the other hand, looked like I had just told him I was moving to another country. "Mom, You sold the house? His voice was quiet, uncertain. Yes, sweetheart. I sold my house. His face fell. But where are we supposed to go? I arched an eyebrow. Well, I'd suggest the same place you were planning to send me. An apartment, perhaps. Surely with both your incomes you can manage. Laura snapped out of her daze at that. This is different. We have a child. You can't just throw us out onto the street. I laughed. Oh, don't be dramatic, Laura. You two have well-paying jobs. Surely you weren't planning to live off me forever, were you? Laura's face burned red. Daniel buried his head in his hands. He knew. He knew this was their fault. They had pushed too hard. They had taken too much. And now I was done. For the next 2 days, Laura stormed around the house, alternating between begging, threatening, and guilt-tripping me. You can't just leave your own son homeless. What about your grandson? You're abandoning him. If you sell, we'll have nowhere to go. Don't you care about family? I ignored it all. Daniel, meanwhile, tried to reason with me in his own way. Mom, are you really sure about this? He asked one evening, as I sat sipping my tea. I gave him a long look. Daniel, when was the last time you asked me if I was comfortable in my own home? He winced. He had no answer. Because he knew the truth, he had stopped considering my feelings the moment they moved in. So I stood up, patted his shoulder, and simply said, You and Laura will figure it out. I'm sure of it. And with that, I left the room. Moving day, their meltdown. The morning of the move, the new owners arrived for a final walkthrough. I could see the panic in Laura's face as she realized this was real. Her eyes darted around the living room, the space she had claimed as her own, the kitchen she had dominated, the bedroom she had demanded be redecorated. It wasn't hers anymore. It never was. As I grabbed my bags and stepped toward the door, she finally lost it. This is insane. You're choosing strangers over your own family? I turned slowly and met her angry, entitled gaze. No, Laura. I'm choosing myself for the first time in a long, long time. And with that, I walked out. One final surprise. As I settled into my beautiful lakefront condo, sipping wine on my new balcony, my phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. Mom, I'm sorry. I should have listened. Laura and I are looking for an apartment now. It's been tough. I get it now. I really do. I hope you're happy. You deserve it. I took a slow sip of my wine, a warm sense of satisfaction settling in my chest. Yes, I was happy,